All right, this is not a required video. It is a choose your own adventure video. If you want to learn how to get better at actually speaking, that is what you're saying, not necessarily what you write, this is the lecture to watch. This is, again, not a required video. Rhetoric, or how to speak effectively in your fundamentals of speaking class. All right. As noted in the outline lecture, you need to have an introduction. Here's mine. Are you ready? Okay, good. My introduction is to let you know the definition of rhetoric, because that is our central idea today, rhetoric. The art or science of all specialized literary uses of language in prose or verse, including the figures of speech. The study of the effective use of language, the ability to use language effectively, the art of making persuasive speeches, oratory, or, and this is the Fox News definition, the art of influencing the thought and conduct of the audience, which you always probably hear that on the news, oh, that's just rhetoric, which gives it a bad name. It's a nice word. It shouldn't have a bad name. It's Fox News' fault. If you like Fox News, I apologize, but it's just rhetoric. That was punny, sorry. All right, so preview at the end of your introduction. So I'm going to let you know where we're going today. The agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about oral style, kinesics, paralanguage, some basic rhetoric techniques, figures of speech, and a toolbox that you can use. Language is power and language is dangerous. What is kind of cool about taking a fundamentals of speaking class is the fact that this is the place where you learn how to speak like yourself and have your own style. It is also how you get jobs. It is how people understand you. It's how you find your future partner. It is how you influence your children when you're raising them. No, you don't show up to an interview and hand them an essay. Like, here I am, I'm well spoken. This is where you are powerful, is how you speak. It is also dangerous because lots of things are told that you are doing non-verbally, or the verbal words that come out of your mouth which say a lot about you. It can say a lot about your maturity, your education level, whether or not you're racist, or whether or not you are a misogynist or a misanthrope. That's a person hater. A misogynist is where you hate women. So these are all little things I'm going to be talking to you about today to help you so you don't fall into little black holes that you never crawl out of. You need to have an oral conversational style, and here are some tips to make that happen. Contractions. You're not going to come up here and talk like you would in your essay. I cannot do that. You will sound weird. Don't do that. Sound like yourself. I can't do that. I won't do that. I will not do that. Please, I will not let you do that, so don't do that. Just don't. Do not do that. It's awkward. See, you need to have the contractions because it sounds more like a person talking. Shorter sentences and less complex. Here's an interesting little statistic for you. When I was a little girl, 6 years old, we had a pretend mock election. This is very exciting. And they told us to go home, and they told us to ask our moms and dads who we were going to vote for, and then come back the next day and vote. And we went upstairs at the gym. I grew up in, it was a really small elementary school built in the 30s, had one of those small little running tracks upstairs. Went up there, and I put my thing in, and the lady, there's 2 boxes, and the lady was like, oh, you're the first little girl to vote for Walter Mondale today. Who's your mommy? Okay, so some people did some studies. Walter Mondale, none of you probably know who he is because he didn't win. Lots of you probably know who Ronald Reagan was because he was one of the most popular presidents we ever had. And this is why. They looked at the vocabulary usage of Walter Mondale's speeches versus Ronald Reagan's, and here's what they discovered. They discovered that Walter Mondale used the vocabulary of a 12th grader, and that Ronald Reagan used the vocabulary of a kindergartner. Now, that's not to say that we Americans are stupid because we chose somebody who uses the vocabulary of a kindergartner, but here's what Reagan understood. Reagan understood that he needed to have shorter sentences that were less complex so that what he was saying reached a whole bunch of people. And if you remember from the outlines lecture, and I said that 2/3 of what I say or what you say goes in one ear and out the other, if it's less complex and it's shorter, it's more than likely going to be heard and understood. Don't become Walter Mondale. He was nice. He's a nice man. He's still alive, I think. Subject, verb, order. These are like when we learned how to write sentences when we were 5 and when we were 6. Keep them simple. Use familiar words, simple, familiar. Do not come up here and pretend that you are Benedict Cumberbatch and you're Sherlock Holmes and you use words like peripatetic. Nobody cares. It just makes you look like a show-off. Don't do it. I will appreciate it because I like big words, but your friends won't. And the general audience, you need to be speaking to everyone. So don't use peripatetic. It's a nice word. Look it up. It's fun. It's fun to say. It's fun to come out of your mouth, but don't do it. Personal pronouns. This is awkward. Lots of us don't realize most of the time in our lives that we don't come home and we're like, hey, Nick, how are you today? We don't usually use people's names. Think about it. When you go around your life, you don't walk around and you're like, hey, Lauren. Lauren's my little assistant here today. She's been taping me. But I'm not going to walk up to her every day and be like, Lauren, did you know? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I just start talking to her. That's just how we do as people. She's not going to be like, Jessica, I thought that what you just said was interesting. It's really weird. It feels weird, and we don't really do it. We give people nicknames. We call them he, she, it, what, whatever. Hey, you. Feels a little more informal. And what we're looking for here in Fundamentals of Speaking class is an informal style. It's your style. It makes you sound like you, and you can use this in the job market. You can use it if you end up wanting to be a teacher or a lawyer or a professor. I don't know, whatever you want to do. But most people don't end up having to give lots of public speeches. So for the most part, you just want to have a polished, informal style that you are comfortable with, and then you're not using lots of filler words that make you look like a jerk. Kinesics. Kinesics is the study of how the body, face, and eyes communicate. Bodily movements. There are descriptive gestures. For example, my horse is about yay high. It's about how tall she is. She's short. All right? Or emphatic gestures. You will see a lot of people up here in their first speeches, and they will be like talking with their hands a whole bunch. That's because for some reason we really like emphatic gestures as Americans, and we're really emphatic. They don't have to do anything. Your hands do not have to do anything. Unless you really want to emphasize something. But for the most part, they don't need to do much. Because we want to be paying attention to this and listening to the things coming out of this, our mouth. The face and the eyes. They need to be seen. Now, some speech classes might tell you to find a spot at the back of the room and stare at that. That will only make you not breathe. And trust me, I'm a theater person. I really like to have my costumes, my makeup, my hair done. I like to have a character. I don't want to be me. So I get it. Nobody really wants to get up here and look at people's eyeballs. That sounds like a terrible idea. But if you don't actually look at people and make a nice scan of people in the room, you have no idea what they're doing. And most of the time, they're just happy that you're speaking and it's not them. And they're like really supportive in a speaking class. They're really like, oh good, they're up there. They're doing a really good job. Let them be helpful to you. And also, if you're taking this class on campus, that's your job. You don't want to be, giving somebody the stink eye out in the audience, because guess what? Revenge is a lovely motivator, and they will do it to you. And it won't be fun. So be supportive out there. But for the most part, that's what I find. Most people just want to be helpful. And when you're looking at helpful eyes and supportive eyes, guess what? You breathe. You have more fun up here. You remember to read your outline. But you didn't write the whole thing because you don't read it. Remember that? Any fool can read. Any fool can read. Any fool can... Don't do that. Personal appearance. Yeah, I remember being a college student. Now, I didn't live on campus. We didn't have campus housing, so I didn't just roll out of bed in my pajamas and just show up here looking all, my hair going all sorts of ways. If you want people to take you seriously, you might want to pay attention to how you dress that day. Is your hat going to be disrespectful, or does it matter? We'll talk about that in discussion forums or in class, whether or not a hat is good or bad or otherwise. Kind of depends on what you're doing that day. But I will tell you this, I've only in my life had one student ever leave class for being super nervous. And what was crazy about this was the fact that this guy had just come back from 2 tours of Afghanistan, and he was a Marine. He was big, too. I mean, this guy he was tall, he was imposing, he looked like he was serving our country, and he did it well. And he got up here, looked at all of us, forgot to breathe, he never breathed out, he just breathed in, and he aborted mission. Out he went. And like a good soldier, he waited until the end of the class, and he was at my office door, and he's like, "I'm so sorry, ma'am, I didn't mean to, good soldier that he was." I was like, "What happened?" He's like, "I don't know. No idea." And Marines, they're the first ones. They're the front lines. So obviously he knows how to go into a situation where you're completely terrorized, right? He couldn't give a speech. So we talked about some things he could do, having little sticky notes that reminded him to breathe, have a very clear outline, blah, 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 blah. I tried to remind him that he has to trick himself. Don't find a point at the back of the room. Pretend all these people are your friends so that the face and eyes are seen and that you see their face and eyes. I know this sounds crazy, but that is actually how this happens. If you actually look at somebody, it forces you to breathe. If you look in their eyes, you have to have a moment with them. It's helpful. Now, his next speech wasn't that great, but he kept looking at, he had like 5 sticky notes of breathe, and he got through it. I don't think he ever breathed, but he sat down, he had to finish the speech. Now, here's the thing about the personal appearance that I was getting at, is the fact that one day, for the persuasive group speech, this dude walks in a suit, hair all done, he looked nice. I remember so much so, like, all the girls in the room were like, he looked good. They're like, "Miss, look at him." Yeah, so he looked good. And guess what? His speech was amazing. He did really, really well. He did everything he was supposed to do. So during the discussion, I said, "Hey, what happened?" He goes, "Oh, you told that one day, you told us about personal appearance might make us feel better and more confident." I did that. And then I also just decided that everybody in the classroom was like my beer buddy. I mean, they're not, but if I talked to them like that, I felt a little more comfortable. And I looked good. And I was like, "You did look good." He's like, "And it worked. That personal appearance thing worked." So if you know that you are somebody who has a lot of nerves, a lot of anxiety, maybe stepping it up a notch on how you look that day might give you a little extra armor, a little something that will help you feel a little more comfortable, and that will make you more confident while speaking. Here's some fun videos from Big Bang Theory, because I'm a fan. Trying to teach Sheldon how to be a little better about public speaking in general. It's a good video. Take a look if you like. Paralanguage. Paralanguage refers to how you say something. These are your vocal elements, your rate and energy, your pauses, your volume, your pitch, your quality of speaking, your articulation, and your pronunciation. There's a whole other separate world of classes that teaches you all of those things. However, here's the problem. If you are somebody who goes to a job interview and you have absolutely no articulation, you're not like this, and it starts to say something a lot about your education level, and maybe that's just how you were raised. Maybe that's just your dialect. Maybe that's how your parents, maybe they have, their doctorates or they have master's degrees, but that's how they talk. Unfortunately, in our country, no articulation translates to hick, uneducated, didn't go to high school. You have to think about how you speak, and the way you speak will say a lot about you. You don't get to show up with an essay. It's just you. And how you say something, or if you talk really fast, or you're talking too fast, if you're talking really too fast, then the people, they're not breathing either. They're freaked out that you're talking so fast. They're worried for you, and then they don't want to work with you. Because half the time when you get a job, some of the question that goes into people's job head is that, are they qualified, and do I want to work side by side with them for pretty much the rest of my life? If you talk really fast and make everybody nervous, guess what? They don't want to work with you. It's not a good thing. And then there are this has only happened one time in my class too. We called this guy Trooper. He talked really slow. He had a sense of entitlement about how slow he talked. He would take really long pauses. No one liked him in class. Please don't do that either. There are lots of polars. You can go to one polar where you're too fast, too slow. Somewhere in the middle. Also, please, 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 please sound like yourself. Pronounce all of your consonants and your vowels. That is helpful. It also helps you be louder. I hate when teachers say that. Be louder! It's not helpful. But if you do pronounce all your consonants and vowels, you tend to be, guess what, louder. All of these things are important. This is a lovely Monty Python skit about paralanguage, how you say something. It's very funny. Take a look at it. Rhetoric, techniques, figures of speech. Like I said, there are many classes. You can take a whole other world of classes where you can learn all about these things. Generally, if you take the history of the English language, it will tell you that vowels are the feeling part of our language. So if you think about listening to a Dr. King's speech, he elongates. I mean, it's part of his dialect, but because he's from the South. But he does elongate all the vowels, and there is an emotion to that. That it works. There's a little bit that works there. The consonants are the intellect. For example, I said the Benedict Cumberbatch. My gosh, that is such the hardest actor name to say. And yesterday on an interview on NPR, I heard him use the word peripatetic. That it's kind of like a crazy energy, peripatetic. This is crazy. It sounds like what it is almost. Obviously, that's a hard word to know, and it has a lot of consonants in it, and therefore, it is an intellectual word. It's one of those $25 words. I hand you $25 if you use peripatetic in a sentence. No, don't. Please don't. But the consonants are, in the history of our language, supposed to be the intellect of our language. Words and images. If you're at home practicing and you look at a word and you give it an image, it will generally give it a better sound. Words into phrases. Take the word and then say the sentence that you have for it, because in your outline you're going to have just a little bit of shorthand. You're going to have a word and then you can create a phrase. Start to practice that, doing it at home. It'll help you write, it'll help you present. Organically, if I'm speaking about my heart, that's my organ. I'm organically speaking. If I'm speaking about my legs, if I'm giving a speech about how to do certain soccer techniques, I can also speak organically, and you can hear that something changes in my voice, in the rhetoric sound of my voice, the art of my voice. Cosmically speaking, some of you who go to church, you've heard ministers and reverends and priests do this all the time. He went up to heaven. You can, when they indicate heaven, their voice goes up there. When they go down to hell, 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 they use, they're speaking cosmically. They're using the world, and it changes the rhetoric. Etymologically speaking, that's the history of a word. If you are super nerdy, please go to the library and look at the Oxford English Dictionary. It's awesome, because I'm a nerd. If you go there, you have to use a little eyeglass to look at the words, because every word has its history of every time it's been used and if the definition changed. What's cool about that is the more you know about a word, the more play on words you can do, and the more nerdy you become. It's okay if you don't want to be a nerd, no big deal, but it's kind of cool to go look at that dictionary. Alliterations. They tell you not to do that in good writing, but guess what? It's great in speeches. It's also great if you ever want to do working PR. Alliterations are memorable. That's the same consonant sound at the beginning of words. Assonances, very similar to an alliteration, but it's the same vowel sounds in the beginning of a word. Onomatopoeia. Thunder! I think anything can be an onomatopoeia. There's actually words that are just onomatopoeic, which means that they sound like what they are. For example, I think poop. Poop sounds like what it is. It's also one of my favorite words because it kind of is, it's also a palindrome, which means you can spell it both ways. It's awesome. That word's great. But if you make a word mean what it is lightning, sound like what the word is, that creates a different kind of rhetoric. It's more fun to talk that way. Antitheses, when we have black and white, or we have white and black. They have their opposites. Give them an opposite inflection that helps for us to have understanding. Puns, wit, wordplay, if you're good at that sort of thing, use them in speech. It's fun, and it also will make you feel like you're having more fun. Or if you think that's totally nerdy, I don't care. It's cool, whatever. I like Dr. Seuss, I'm gonna out myself, no big deal. Ladders. Ladders are a technique where you have a list, because lists are boring, but sometimes we have to give speeches that have lists. And you imagine that you're climbing up the ladder, and every time you say something new, you have to raise the inflection of your voice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, which is a comedy technique. You can fall off the ladder too, which is fun. If you have a list, make sure you're changing the inflection, that you're not just like monotone, say the list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This gets funny if I keep doing it, but it's not funny if I just do it and I'm trying to be serious. Not helpful. Parentheticals are usually in between 2 commas or in parentheses, obviously. And you want to change the inflection of your voice because a parenthetical is you interrupting yourself. Now, if you're using a parenthetical in a speech, it means that you did not use the Ronald Reagan way to a best speech technique, which is that short, less complex sentence structure and, kindergarten vocabulary level. But if you are using a parenthetical or it's a quote you're reading, make sure you change your inflection. So for example, if I were going to interrupt myself in the middle of a speech, I'm going to go to the store, but then there was a cat, and then I hit the cat, but then the cat died. I just changed my inflection. It's also funny because it's weird. Double entendres. If you go back to this lovely place, the etymologically speaking, which is the history of a word, you will find that certain words, like the word will, I will go do that for you. I will. If you look at the word will in the Oxford English Dictionary, this is the thing you will discover, is that will has a funny sexual connotation, because will also, if you've heard the word willy, will is your down there creating the world. Your will comes out and it does things. It leaves a legacy, as it were. So if you will go do something, you can say that, and you can hear in my voice I'm using both definitions at the same time. That's a double entendre, double meaning. Rhyme. Rhymes are fun. I like them. Can't really use them in essays all the time because it sounds weird. You can use them in poems, but guess what? We like them in public speaking because it's fun. When we're having fun up here, guess what? These people are having fun. Fun breeds fun. It's good. Keep it fun. Metaphors, similes, verse, repetition. Again, that 2/3 rule. If you repeat things, it's not boring. It's just helpful. It's boring in an essay, but it's helpful in a public speech. Rhetoric techniques. This is a guy who gives like a better version of it, and he's kind of good looking. I don't know. Voice toolbox. These are how you use your voice. Diaphragmatic breathing is how you should breathe. Your diaphragm is like a little tire inner tube here, about here. And when you breathe in, it goes all the way around your back, and it's usually flat, and then when you breathe in, it creates more room. And most of your diaphragm is actually back here. So if you breathe with your back, a lot of people tell you to breathe down here. Sure, it's going to force you to breathe in your diaphragm if you kind of put your focus here, but if you breathe here, it relaxes you. All of your emotions sit in your solar plexus, and if your solar plexus is right with your diaphragm. If you're nervous and you actually use diaphragmatic breathing, you will have less anxiety and you will be able to speak in longer sentences. Resonance. Resonance are your mms, your m's, n's, and your sound like ring. Those things are helpful. They ring in the room, for example. You can hear it right now, reverberating in this room, creating resonance, which is that sort of buzz sound. Articulation. I've already talked about articulation, but this is probably your best friend. If you've heard nothing else in this rhetoric speech, work on your articulation. Make sure you pronounce all of your consonants and your vowels. Projection. This up here is a projector. It has a lamp in it, which then has some images being sent to it from the computer, and guess what? It sends itself over there. When I am projecting my voice, I am making sure it hits one of these corners in here, or a wall, or a person. I can look back there at my friend Lauren, and I can say, hey Lauren, how's it going? And I'm actually looking at her, and the words and the sounds go to her because I am projecting them to her. I am sending them. So when somebody tells you to project more, you need to kind of imagine yourself as a lamp that has a landing spot and creates it. If you want to make sure you're looking at this one person, it's a wonderful technique if you want to be a teacher. It's a great way to look at one person like, what are you doing there? What's in your lap? What's going on? Tapping something down there? Couldn't be your phone, could it? Yeah. So projecting, it makes things specific. Pitch. So your pitch can be low, your pitch can be high. Okay, no one really likes the high-pitched voice. However, women, don't also go down and start talking like this because we want to sound like older or something. I don't know, it's really bad on your voice. On my larynx right now, what's going on? There's like these little things in my throat and they're like going like that right now. Literally, that's what I'm doing to them. Please talk in this pitch that is yours. If you speak in the pitch that is yours, your voice won't get as tired and it's nicer to listen to. But if you like force it into something like down here, you're gonna ruin it and you become like a smoker. I don't even smoke. Okay? Volume. Sometimes we can be quiet, sometimes we can be super loud. Here's the thing, you never really want to be super loud. But most of the time, the mistake most people make in this class is that they are too quiet. If you know that your voice is not reaching any further than you reading your speech because you wrote it all out, you didn't listen to me because you didn't listen to the whole thing, any fool can read, any fool can read, any fool can read, and you're like reading and only your voice is projecting from here to here, guess what? We won't hear you because you're not sending it to the people in the room. Another reason to write it in shorthand so you can make sure to make eye contact, face and eyes, to the people in the room. Yay. Tempo. I already talked about this, but I'm just going to remind you. Too fast is going to make people think you're crazy and they're not going to hang out with you anymore. And too slow, no one likes you. It's just weird. Phrasing. This is a more advanced technique. It's how we say a sentence and how it's phrased, how we begin, how we end it, what the middle is like. For example, if I'm using my British accent, if you have to go into dialect, lots of times in British humour, the joke is in the middle of the sentence because their phrasing is very different than ours. Whereas in the United States, we usually have what we call the punchline. The joke is at the end, and that's our phrasing. These are things that our ear knows. Our ear knows this better than our voice. How do you get better at this? Watch your favorite politicians or watch your favorite comedians. Keep in mind, comedians have the hardest public speaking job of anyone in the world, even politicians, because they have the specific purpose of making people laugh for an hour or two. It's a 2-hour, sometimes, speech, where the specific purpose is, I'm going to make you laugh. They are very good at phrasing. So if you want to get better at phrasing, watch it, listen to it, see how it's done well. Watch a comedian, a good comedian. Expression. Oh my gosh, it's really funny to just see people like come up here and have absolutely no expression. Like, I don't know what I'm doing right now. If you don't have any expression, you also probably won't have any articulation. We're Americans. We kind of overdo the expression. Please prove our stereotype in that way. Expression is helpful, and again, fun breeds fun. So if I'm having fun, my face is having fun. Guess what? You're going to be having fun, even if you don't like me, because you're being a supportive audience, and you don't want to be up here. Nobody wants to be up here. If the person's up here, you're saying, good job for you for being up there. Yay. Have some expression on your face. It's a little awkward when you don't. Character voices. If you are good at that, again, fun breeds fun. Do character voices. You've heard me do several of them throughout my 2 lectures of outlines and rhetoric. So, and it makes you have more fun. It's also more fun to listen to. And if you change your voice, people tend to pay attention more. Speech toolbox. That was your voice, how your voice works. Speech, trust. You have to trust everyone in here. I know that's hard to say, but you have to trust that they're not going to give you the stink eye. So don't give it to them and be a trustworthy person. Observation. Observe other speeches. Go watch them. That's the best tool that you can do, is go and watch other speeches. You're going to watch them in here, but if you yourself want to get better, go watch some politicians and some comedians. It's helpful. Concentration. When you get up here, have your training wheels, otherwise known as your outline. It will keep you focused, and you will have some concentration. Otherwise, you're going to forget to breathe. Cooperation. You're going to have a group project if you are an on-campus learner. You will not do that in the online portion, but you will have to have group discussions all of the time. And you need to learn how to communicate with people. That's half this class, is learning how to talk to one another in addition to talking at one another. Self-confidence. I don't care what you do. Call your mom, call your dad, call your best friend. Ask them what they like about you, because we're all taught to be super humble. So ask them, write that stuff down, put it on a little note. You don't need to show it to anybody. Read that thing. I used to always do it like, Dad, I would call him before I had to give like a monologue or something when I was in acting school, and like, just tell me you love me. I love you. Good. Whatever works for you. I don't know what works for you, but you need to be self-confident on the day that you give your speech. Otherwise, you will abort mission. You will do that conclusion that I don't like, where you get up here and you're like, everything's good. And you just go sit down. You don't say thank you. You don't say I'm done, which I don't like either, or that's it. You don't do anything because you didn't have self-confidence. You need to like yourself just a little bit that day. Just for the class, that's all I ask, okay? Imagination. Be creative. Don't be boring. Don't go steal somebody's YouTube self-introductory speech, persuasive speech on YouTube and try to do it. It's not going to sound like you. You're not going to have fun. The main trick to everything in your life, let alone this class, is to do something you want to do. And guess what? This is an awesome statistic for me. Usually no one wants to take this class. Every time I start this class, I say, hey, who signed up for this? Because they wanted to. No hands go up. Maybe one. Maybe it's a brown noser. I'm not sure. But guess what? No one wants to be here. That's a given circumstance. We can't do anything about it. Let's let that go. Okay? And come up here, and you have to give the speech. It is a required class. Do something that you want to do. Be creative. Use your imagination. Be you. And there's always a conclusion, as promised from the outline. So today we talked a lot about oral style, which is your voice. Kinesics, your body, your face, the things that it does. Paralanguage, how you say something. Lots of rhetoric techniques, figures of speech, and the toolboxes for your voice and for your speech giving. Thank you, and if you enjoyed this, I'm glad. But you didn't have to watch it, so thank you for doing that.